the Natty mindset and your experience of Strongwoman and people say like we're in a sport where we kind of a lot of people. Not a lot of people. I don't want to say a lot of people take gear, but a lot of people expect that you have to take gear to be competitive. That's the kind of stigma that kind of I see, is the fact that, well, everybody can get into Strongwoman, Strongman, and have a bit of fun, and you just have to be strong, and there's no pressure to do anything. But if you want to get anywhere within the sport, if you want to progress, if you want to win titles, you want to compete at a higher level, you kind of it's something that you've got to consider. You've got to be taking gear. What do you think about that? Is that something that you've experienced, like that kind of thought process, or like what? Tell us about it.
Yeah, I think it's something that has been said to me a lot over the years. It's not something that I've ever believed. And I think so. I never touched anything, don't plan to, but I think there's been a lot of people that are like, oh well, look how well you've done naturally, like imagine if you were to go on. And I'm like, well, I don't need to imagine, like I'm getting better every year without it. And I just think I don't know, for me it's that like cost reward thing. For me personally, the cost isn't worth the reward, but for other people that is, and that's fine. And I think it's just about sticking with what you feel is right, not shitting on anyone else's opinions. Everyone's free to do what they want, but for me, I just find it fascinating what my body has been able to do and how fast it's been able to progress in the way that it has, without anything. And I think we're going through a bit of a change at the moment. I think historically, whenever anyone who was natural or drug-free mentioned that, it was like, well, no one cares if you're natty, blah 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 blah. But I actually think it's great that more people are talking about it, because it means there's more education and people are going to be safer with it. But I also think it's really important that we do tell people that you don't need to, like you and I have both competed internationally, we've both won titles without it. And I think it's important that people coming into the sport, especially young impressionable people, know that it is possible, and they don't need to jump on silly doses straight away. It's one of those topics that's quite difficult to talk about, and you can never really quite get the words right. But I think in some of that mumbling, hopefully there's been some sense that hasn't offended anyone.
And the reason why I wanted to talk to you about this, I may be wrong, but my kind of perception of your perception is that you're kind of open-minded to it, in terms of the fact that you don't judge other people who do it, like, because like I feel like I'm in a unique stance here, where like I'm kind of in like I love talking to Shane about it on the podcast and stuff, because I feel like we're both really open-minded, but we're at the other end of the other end, like you get too many people who don't take gear, who are like, oh yeah, people who take gear are idiots, or they're cheating or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then you get people who take gear who just think people who are natty are just idiots and holding themselves back, and like, well, what it's like an essential part of the kind of training.
Yeah.
Whereas it's great seeing you showing that, well, there's like I suppose you don't go around like playing that I'm natty like I hate, or hashtag, or you might do hashtags. I don't know. I don't check them out, but yeah, you don't. Yeah, I find it inspiring, because you don't like that kind. I find people who go on about it a lot don't necessarily realize it, but they're holding themselves back because they're creating this kind of this illusion that they're almost using it as an excuse to not get as good as they can, because they're, oh, well, I'm not, all the guys they compete against are taking gear, so they're kind of giving themselves that like excuse to fail. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah, I get what you're saying, and I think we go into untested competitions knowing that it's allowed and that it's a thing. So I think on that playing field, you are where you are and you've made that decision, you know that it's not an unfair playing field, because if I wanted to go on, then I could. I just choose not to. And I think, going back to what you were saying about that spectrum, I think I sit somewhere kind of in between. Like, I am totally open to other people using it if that's what they wish, but I am against people going on it too early and going on too much too early. People bashing in gear before they've even got basic skills down. And someone made a joke before, like, yeah, but imagine learning skills and juicing, like you'd have the strength to go with it. It's like, well, but why? Like, if you're not in contention to get some significant reward from it, and you're not down with foundations yet, why put your body and health at risk? But equally, if you're going for top spots, you are completely aware of everything that you're taking, side effects with it, do what you want.
So when did you first become aware of it being a thing, or was it when you just did before you competed? Was it when you just started out, or was it when you were getting to like kind of national level and you were noticing that, oh, the higher up I go, the more prevalent it is, or was it when you started?
I knew it was a thing pretty much as soon as I started. I trained at a gym where everybody was on it, so it was spoken about quite openly, which I'm kind of grateful for, because it meant I wasn't naive. However, I was naive to how much it was used in the women's side of the sport, and I think only since competing internationally have I become aware of how much of a thing it is. And I think a lot of people will come to me like, oh, do you think I need to go here? So and so. I had a client come to me, and another coach had said to them they wouldn't progress in the sport unless they started taking SARMs. And I think comments like that are really dangerous, because actually it's nothing to do with her strength as to why she doesn't perform in a competition. It's skill, nerves, comp pressure, practice, that kind of stuff. And I don't know the point I'm trying to make or the direction I'm trying to go in with this, but I think it's just, on either end of the spectrum, we need to be mindful and sensitive towards other people's reasonings as to why they do or don't dabble.
Yeah, I suppose the thing that I've always promoted is there are so many things to get right that are going to have like a massive effect on your performance, like you just mentioned, like say all the things that you just mentioned. But you find that people, I don't want to kind of say what's too early for, or when people should be doing it, or what, anything on dosages or anything like that, because I don't know. But like I do think people are missing the boat when they've still not got like a progressive training system that they follow, or the kind of they're inconsistent with the train. They might miss 2 of the sessions in a week, and then start afresh on Monday or whatever, and they haven't hit a decent stretch of consistent training, or the nutrition's all over the place, like they
haven't nailed the basics.
The sleep quality is like non-existent and inconsistent, and sleep patterns, and the recoveries, that they're always in pain. Like there's so many little things to go at that are going to give like such a big return. Mm-hmm. that can actually, just going at those can, depending on your goals within the sport, you can actually achieve like massive things that people. I suppose that's what I find cool about you. But like, forget philosophy. You just fundamentally break it down to what you can do. Like, because this is the reason why I'm passionate about it, because people have said to me like years ago, oh, you're not going to be able to do X, Y, and Z if you don't do this. And I'm like, oh, well, I reckon it will. I reckon I'll be able to. It might just take a while.
That's it. That's it.
And then, like you say, we competed internationally. Like, I won England's Strongest Man last year in the tested or whatever. the same year as winning the Europe, the tested Europeans. And I've done that, the dumbbell world record for the under 80s. That like people like you, oh, like you're not going to be able to. You need to do this, need to do that, and it's just. I suppose it's like a bigger thing. It's this conversation much beyond, like, say, taking gear and the politics of that and the ethics and stuff. But actually, more about the message of this episode is actually just what you can achieve just by kind of backing yourself. Like, and it doesn't have to be. You don't have to always be following things that might be optimal for on paper. So another thing that I wanted to talk about linking with this was, like, say a thing that you've probably had over the years, I've had over the years, like, oh, if you want to lift heavy weights, you need to be big. You need to be that's a big thing, especially more with, I see it with, like, say a lot of novice men or intermediate, like beginner men and stuff. Like, they're just encouraged to put on weight and force feeding themselves calories to improve the lifts. Like, can you tell us about your experience in that, please, and your thought processes?
Yeah, I think kind of objective thought process is really the obvious to start. That yes, it's called Strongman and we need to be statically strong, but if you are too big, carry too much body fat, you're not going to be able to get in optimal body positions for those static lifts. A lot of it now is about stamina, endurance, fitness. You need to be able to get through 6 events in one day sometimes. You need to be able to move fast. You need to be able to keep doing an exercise for 1 to 2 minutes. If you're just piling on weight without any thought, and especially if you're putting on a large amount of weight in a small amount of time, your body's not going to be able to keep up with the demand of competing and training. So, like, from that, how I talk to my clients, if someone has said to them you need to get bigger, that's my first kind of come back with that, and the starting place for the discussion there. And personally, my journey is I started off heavier, was advised to go into a lighter weight class, which I did, and lo and behold, I got much stronger as I lost that weight. It didn't really impact me at all, and it's only recently over the last year where I've thought, okay, a little bit of extra mass might be helpful. But when I was at 64, I was like under 15% body fat, like very lean. My joints were starting to hurt, and I couldn't really put on any more tissue without real harsh cuts, and then I had to think about health. So I am putting on weight now, which I am getting stronger, but I'm not putting on excess weight. I'm putting on weight sensibly and at a controlled pace, and keeping kind of body composition in mind as well. So I think, yes, mass does move mass to a certain extent, and I'm seeing the benefits of that now, but it's not, fat doesn't move mass, if that makes sense. And that's not to seem derogatory at all. It's using fat in its, like, scientific term, as opposed to, I'm not trying to be offensive, but
so to give people a bit of an idea of, like, the weights that you can, like, what you can achieve as, like, a lightweight, like, you can hit 1.5 times body weight overhead. Like say I'm talking to you as a, like, when you competed last year under 64, like, 1.5 times body weight overhead. You're talking triple body weight deadlifts. You talk, like, probably for a couple of reps, to be honest.
Yeah.
You're talking 4.5 times body weight yoke.
Yeah.
And
5 and a bit times body weight dinghy.
Yeah, it's amazing. But then you'll get the people who come in from the other end and say, oh, well, like, say relative strength doesn't matter so much, blah 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 blah. Yeah. It's about the absolute weight that you can lift, and whereas you're kind of proving that your relative strength is high, but also your absolute strength is really high too. Like, you're seeing, like, a lot of the open ladies, the struggling to go over 90 kilos on the overhead. You're struggling to hit like over 200 deadlift is a big figure for anybody, isn't it?
Yeah.
250, 260, 270 yokes. Like people aren't moving crazy fast for them, are they?
No.
So that was kind of leading me into another question on this. Like, what would be an ideal weight to like? You competed, you've done some open competitions, haven't you? Like, what's an ideal weight to compete as an open?
I think it depends on the events. First and foremost, I think for the competition just gone, as long as you're strong, like Shannon came third, I came fifth, and we were the two lightest athletes in the field. So I actually think body weight was kind of irrelevant there. If you've got something like a sled drag or a truck pull, then yes, it's going to be beneficial to be heavier. For me personally, I feel better heavier. My joints feel better just because they're more cushioned. I feel like I've got more weight behind me with the stones. So on Atlas stones before, I'm very tall, but I didn't have very much weight behind me. So I had the limbs, but I didn't have the weight to balance that out. Whereas now that all feels much, much better. So for me, I would say my ideal body weight, if I was just to compete as an open, would be between 70 and 80 kilos. I don't think I'd be comfortable beyond that. It would take me a long time to put on that much mass. It just wouldn't be very useful. But for someone who is much taller than me or is naturally kind of bigger, then that's going to be different. So I think it depends on your body type. It depends on your training history, and also I'm very skilled in movement, so I don't need to have as much strength as other people, so I can use like the split jerk and things, whereas other people might rely more on push press, where having more muscle mass is going to be beneficial. So I think there's no solid answer in it, so it depends. But I think that thought process of I need to put on as much weight as I can to be strong is dangerous.
And I think it's absolutely brilliant that people like yourself and Shannon and Ree like are competing in, like, say, open class comps, and it's not just the theory of, oh well, if some of these under 64s or under 73s went to compete with the opens, like that they do well, like you're proving it, like you're putting it out there. So I just think it's great that you're proving that we don't need to be this kind of mass moves mass thing. Like, you don't need to be doing that if you don't want to. If you want to put on weight, great.
I think it's as long as it's whatever you're comfortable with, whilst keeping your health in mind. I think that's really important, and something when we talk about the Natty mindset and stuff as well, that's a massive part of my kind of philosophy behind that, is just health. Great.
And then tell us just how the mindset shift is. Tell us about your mindset shift. Now you're looking to be in under 73 compared to the under 64. Like, you've gone from, like, say, the challenges that come with cutting weight to actually embracing a kind of heavier weight class and feeling more healthy. Like, how does this feed into the kind of your mentality as well as the physical health?
I think in going up a weight class, a lot of people think that the challenges are going to be dealing with looking bigger and that physical appearance, especially with being a woman, but actually that's been one of the smallest aspects for me. It's been more when I was cutting, a lot of competing was about the cut, about making weight, water loading, all of those things, and I didn't realize how much I associated those things with being an athlete. And now that I'm not having to do those things, I had a good couple of months where I actually felt less like an athlete, very impostery, because I wasn't having to cut. Like, I was actually able to enjoy food, which is like, it's crazy. Whereas now I feel actually being able to enjoy food and not worry about weight cuts actually reduces my stress, which is going to mean that I train better, I recover better, and it's just something to get used to. It's a totally new way of thinking about things, but it's also, and like I say, I used to do so much for recovery in terms of foam rolling, stretching, and my joints were always knackered. Like, my knees and my hips were whenever I went for treatment, they were like, oh, it's not looking good, Chloe. Whereas now, because my body fat is in a healthy range for a woman, I'm actually able to recover a lot better. I feel better going into my sessions, got more energy. My knees don't hurt as much because
Yeah.
my tendons have got some cushioning. Yeah, so there's kind of,
I think that's
a lot of different things going on.
Really interesting point about, like, say we're saying about like you being, like, say, being too fat and having all this non-functional mass isn't helping you, but also being too lean. Like a lot of people don't experience this by going too far the other way, but like I felt it. Like I've had some stuff that I put on social media before, but when I've been like when I first cut to 80 and I dieted down way too low in my, like, looking back, and I didn't really cut. I just dieted down. I was just like a ridiculously low percentage body fat.
Yeah.
But the problem is, like, people are seeing pictures of that and saying, oh, well done, you look amazing, or you, like, people associate looking like that with actually like it's a good thing. And the sad thing is, like, a lot of people seek that, you know, not necessarily within this sport, but like, you know, like people who want to go on girls' holiday or lads' holiday and they're like, oh, I look ripped for going to Ibiza or whatever, like, and they're actually seeking that.
Yeah, and
I don't think it's like, I felt awful.
Yeah,
it's a healthy thing.
that's it,
Felt
and it's
horrendous.
like, and when you see bodybuilders,
But it's
like,
not healthy.
Obviously, we're not going to the extremes that bodybuilder does. Like my body fat wasn't that low, but it was under what is ideal for performance. When you're, say, dieting down for a bodybuilding show, you can adjust your load and your training intensity to that. When you're cutting for a strongman show, your body fat is coming down, but the intensity of your training has to maintain or increase. So you're like putting more and more strain through your body, and it's less and less able to recover, which means, like, yeah, I did pretty well at Worlds, but I probably didn't do as well as what I could at heavyweight because I couldn't recover and my body wasn't functioning as it would normally. So I think, yeah, it's something to think about, because I think especially since the weight classes are becoming more popular, kind of contradicting what we said earlier, is that everyone's kind of, well, the lower weight class I can get into, the better I'm going to be because of my strength. Whereas actually, sometimes it's about, okay, I might not be the top in this weight class now, but my health is going to be better, which is going to enable me to train better, recover better, and in the long game, achieve more.